The purpose of this film is to give you a report on what's new and what's old in current-day Princeton. It is most appropriate that your guide and narrator on this tour should be Walker W. Stevenson of the class of 1935, President of the National Alumni Association and Chairman of the Alumni Council. There could be no better way to start our tour of Princeton than by sitting in on one of the early meetings of the freshman class. This is a meeting to acquaint the incoming freshmen with the honor system. As it has been for 5 decades, this meeting is conducted by the Alumni Council. Walker Stevenson is talking to them now in Alexander Hall. Let's go and join them, and then Walker Stevenson will take you on a tour of Princeton. I hope you enjoy it.
Every distinguished college or university has the distinctive and fine traditions that apply on that particular place. But since you have selected Princeton, and Princeton has selected you, it is only proper that you should learn at first hand from her alumni what the honor system really means and why it is probably the most valued of her many traditions. The honor system, however, is more than a tradition. It's not merely a custom handed down to you by old grads. You could call it a point of view which was developed here at Princeton by undergraduates, by men of your age, men like yourself. It is not a rule that was created or enforced by the faculty or by the administration. This plan was developed 65 years ago by undergraduates. For 65 years, it has been a successful way of life for undergraduates. Speaking for the alumni, I assure you that the honor system has inculcated in each of us certain aspects of character, integrity, and loyalty, which are among the most important benefits from our Princeton education.
Now that we've seen some of the undergraduates who will live here during the next 4 years, let's take a look at the campus they will inhabit. One of the major features of each Princeton Today program is an inspection of the scale model of the campus, as it is now and as it will be. Edgar Gemmell, 34, Administrative Vice President of the university, shows visitors what Princeton will look like in 1963.
The scale here is 1 inch to 50 feet. You are looking at the campus from a point above Nassau Street. Here is Nassau Hall, and behind it, Whig and Clio. University Field is the site of the new engineering quadrangle, schematically represented here. Work on the quadrangle was started at the end of October. There are 3 major additions to the academic plant here on the main campus. There are new wings on McCormick Hall to provide a more adequate art museum, additional teaching space for the Department of Art and Archaeology, and a fireproof home for the great Marquand Library. A new quadrangle in the proportions of mass to open space that is characteristic of the Princeton campus will be developed around the lawn west of 79 Hall, with a new home for the music department in this general area and the School of Architecture approximately here. We are now looking at Guillot Hall. The new wing is the George M. Moffett Biological Laboratory. Beside it, extending out from the lower floor of Guillot, is an addition for the Department of Geology. These new buildings are already constructed and are in use. Over here at the southeast corner of Palmer Stadium is the new field house to provide facilities for the students who will be using the baseball fields, the soccer fields, the lacrosse fields, which are located east of the stadium. The big dome represents a cage, which is part of the long-range development program for the Department of Athletics. In the space between the end of the stadium and the new field house, Frelinghuysen Field, a practice field for the varsity, is now under construction. The model shows College Road relocated several hundred yards to the south in order to carry the heavy local traffic away from the new dormitories and south of the playing fields. Of the group of buildings shown here, 5 dormitories and Wilcox Hall, the new dining and social facility, are up. Wilcox Hall is scheduled for use in June of 1961. The schematic representation of the 3 most southerly buildings is highly conjectural. We want at least a year or more experience living with the new buildings before plans are drawn for the second flight of dormitories, which is a part of the $53 million campaign. Now we move over to the west. This is the new residential quadrangle projected for the graduate college. The graduate school has more than tripled its size in the last 2 decades. It is in the area of graduate instruction that Princeton can best meet her national obligations to educate the teachers of tomorrow. Finally, here by the shore of Lake Carnegie, between the boathouse and the trestle of the PJ&B, the model shows 3 apartment houses, of which 1 is a part of the $53 million campaign and 2 are projected for the more distant future. The apartment house, which is now under construction, provides 48 2-bedroom apartments and 48 3-bedroom apartments, each with a southern exposure and a view of the lake. There will inevitably be changes in detail, but in large outline, these will be the features of Princeton's campus in 1963.
Last spring, ground was broken for the new faculty apartment house you just saw. 5 new undergraduate dormitories were completed in 1960. 3 of them are gifts of the classes of 1937, 38, and 39. 1 is the gift of the descendants of 2 distinguished Princeton trustees, William Church Osborne, 83, and Cleveland H. Dodge, 79. The 5th has been named in honor of the late dean of the college, Christian Gauss. On the roof of Guillot Hall, experiments are being conducted to determine the nature of the physiological mechanism which enables birds to orient themselves with relation to the sun. A starling is placed in a cage, which in turn is put on this table, which has 12 compartments around it. A surrounding screen hides everything from the bird but the sun. The bird has been trained to find food in a compartment at a given compass point. No matter what is done to confuse it, the bird will always, provided it can see the sun, go in the direction where it has been taught to find food. This large tank, which stands about 21 feet high and measures nearly 15 feet in diameter, contains an important part of the equipment which supplies power to the huge magnet of the Princeton, Pennsylvania proton accelerator. This device, which is known as a transformer choke, is of highly special design and costs nearly $500,000. It weighs over 100 tons and contains about 12,000 gallons of transformer oil for cooling and insulation. Shipping it from the factory at Schenectady, New York, was extremely complicated and even required cutting away part of a railroad station at one stage of the journey. This transformer choke is now being connected to the synchrotron magnets through large lead-sheathed cables running vertically through the mound. The magnets will provide the means for keeping a proton beam inside the laboratory while it is accelerated by the radio frequency power system to a velocity approaching the velocity of light. This accelerated proton beam, which will have an energy of 3 billion electron volts, will be used to explore the nature and structure of matter, much as a microscope is used to study much larger structures. At the architectural lab, research that is of immense value to architects and builders all over the world has been in progress for some time. This thermoheliodon, which is the only one of its kind in the world, is designed to study the effects of the sun's rays, wind, and radiation on various kinds of building materials. The sun can be moved to simulate its position and intensity at any hour of the day, at any season, for any latitude. Another creation of the School of Architecture is the heliodon, which can show you how much sun you will get in your living room on a bright day at any hour, no matter where you live. This model is of a housing development near Chicago at 10 o'clock on a morning in July. The model is then adjusted to show what the incidence of sunlight would be on the afternoon of the same day at about 4 o'clock. Then the sun can be moved to show what apartments would be getting sun on an afternoon the following January. A project of the Department of Aeronautical Engineering being carried out at the James Forrestal Research Center is research into the problems of low-speed flight. Models and full-scale craft, such as this ground effect scooter, are used by faculty and students in a coordinated theoretical and experimental attack upon the problem being studied. This ground effect vehicle uses a horizontally mounted propeller to direct jets of air against the ground through a vent around the periphery of the disc-shaped body. The lift of the air jets is augmented considerably by the pressure exerted by the trapped air under the base of the vehicle. This lift augmentation allows the machine to operate close to the ground with greatly reduced power. These vehicles have recently been referred to as air cars, and they operate equally well over water or land. Another phase of the program of research in the area of low-speed flight is concerned with the dynamics and controllability of helicopters and other types of vertical takeoff aircraft. Important in these investigations are actual flight tests using this specially equipped helicopter. The controllability and flying characteristics of this research tool may be varied over a wide range in order to simulate the behavior of numerous types of low-speed aircraft now flying, or to predict the behavior of those still in the design stage. An important tool also used in this area of research is the Forward Flight Model Facility. Scale models of aircraft such as the one shown here are able to fly freely using their own power down the length of a 700-foot track. Since the supporting carriage merely chases the model and places no restraint upon it, important aeronautical data may be obtained in much the same fashion as in a wind tunnel. Professor David Hazen here demonstrates the use of the wind tunnel in studying the problems of low-speed flight. The model shows what happens to the air currents on a vertical takeoff machine which has wings, engine, and propeller turned straight up. When the props are started, the thrust is vertical until the machine is in the air. Then the wing can be rotated down until the plane is flying in a conventional manner. In this model, large flaps come down from the wings so the propeller slipstream is diverted until the resultant force is vertical. This would make it possible for the machine to hover in this position. As you can see, wind tunnels have sides from which air currents can be deflected and reflected, and the researchers felt that the accuracy of their measurements was being reduced by deflection from the walls of the tunnel. The ideal wind tunnel, of course, would have no sides and practically no top or bottom. Professor Hazen and his assistants found such a one at Lakehurst Naval Base. Here, models are attached beneath blimps which can be taken to an altitude where there are no deflecting surfaces of any kind. Among the members of the Princeton faculty who achieved particular distinction in 1960 was Dr. Eugene Wigner of the physics department, who received the Fermi Award of $50,000 from the federal government and shared the Atoms for Peace Award of $75,000 in recognition of his contributions to the advancement of basic knowledge in the field of atomic physics. Professor Robert Palmer of the history department had the distinction of winning the Bancroft Award for his notable history, The Age of the Democratic Revolution. The Bancroft Award was $3,000. In addition, Professor Palmer received a $10,000 award for distinguished scholarship from the American Council of Learned Societies. In the last 5 years, more than 30 groups of alumni have visited the campus under the Princeton Today program. It all started in an effort to give schools committee chairmen, annual giving agents, and other interested alumni a new insight into the vitality and vigor of contemporary Princeton. After a Thursday evening meeting with undergraduates, the group meets Friday morning to hear Dan Coyle, 38, describe the administrative structure of the university. The Princeton Today group has listened from the back rows to a history lecture by Professor Gordon Craig, 36. They join the undergraduates in applauding a stimulating experience. Here, the alumni visitors are being shepherded through the vast Matterhorn project, which is financed by the Atomic Energy Commission to explore ways and means of harnessing the power of nuclear fusion for peaceful purposes. This great research instrument has been built at the Forrestal Research Center, which occupies land out on Route 1, where the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research was located for many years. The last meeting of a Princeton Today session occurs on Saturday morning at breakfast in the faculty lunchroom of the Firestone Library, where the two vice presidents, in this case Dick Mestres, 31, try to answer all the questions that have been stimulated by the experiences of the visit. In 1960, 2 new alumni trustees were elected to the board and 1 term trustee. Dr. Dean Clark of Boston was elected an alumni trustee. He is director of the Massachusetts General Hospital. In Cleveland, Richard Huff, 39, operating vice president of the Ohio Telephone Company, was picked to serve 4 years as a term trustee. In Washington, D.C., James Lemon, 26, an active leader in the local organization of the $53 million campaign, also was elected alumni trustee. Despite all the talk of grinding in present-day Princeton, an early evening June concert by the university band in front of Nassau Hall can still seduce the most conscientious scholar. The 1960 production of the Triangle Club was, in the opinion of most critics, one of that famous organization's most notable successes. It wasn't just old tigers who thought that the show was great. The State Department sent the show overseas last summer to entertain American personnel abroad and to appear publicly in the capitals of Western Europe.
We're shaking your hand. It's so very vernacular. When people like you meet with people like us, like here where we happen to be, then a big hello is what you should expect.
Princeton was one of the first American universities to set up a laboratory for the study of foreign languages. Here, the student can study individually or in class groups, or with his professor, as one young man is doing in this picture. He is studying Arabic and has reached the stage of his subject where he can converse with some facility. The conversation is being recorded on tape, so he will be able to listen to it later.
مبسوط الحمد لله.
شو اللغة اللي عم تدرسها؟
بدرس اللغة العربية.
عربية.
عربية.
قديش صار لك تدرس عربي؟
صار لي 8 أشهر.
This student of elementary
Bonjour,
French
monsieur.
has the help of the professor at the console,
Comment
who can
allez-vous?
plug into his booth and give him examples in
Quelle
accent
langue
to emulate.
étudions-nous
They will be
aujourd'hui?
recorded too for subsequent analysis and criticism.
Nous étudions le français.
Nous étudions le français.
Depuis quand?
Добрый день.
Here is a student of Russian. His professor has taped statements and questions which the student will record on another tape along with his answers. Spring sports at Princeton went well. Here is outstanding trackman Ed Thurber, 62, winning the javelin throw in the Cornell meet. In March, Steve Veslage, 61, won the Intercollegiate Squash Championship for the second consecutive time. Here, Steve, in the flannels, is practicing with Princeton's number 2 man, Jimmy Zugg. The lacrosse team won the Ivy League title. Here is the key goal being scored against Cornell in the game that brought the crown to the Princeton Stickmen. The 1960 reunions drew greater crowds than ever, and the faculty alumni forums hit a new high in attendance. This crowd poured into the auditorium at Woodrow Wilson Hall to hear President Goheen and others discuss efficiency in higher education. On Saturday morning before the P-Raid, the class of 1940 staged a circus on the campus to the delight of the very oldest and the very youngest among the spectators. President Goheen enjoyed his 20th reunion and led the P-Raid. The children who attended the 25th reunion with their fathers gave a new dimension to the population explosion. Here they march, all 493 of them, celebrating Daddy's formal entrance into middle age. But all the marchers were not youngsters. Here McShane Gordon, 91, Walter Johnson, 97, and Net Poe, 97, acknowledged the plaudits of the crowd. Streams of boys and girls preceded each of the major reunion classes. The 20th year class had a giant turnout of the sandbox set. The last baseball game on University Field was a fitting climax to the great tradition. A combination of 12 Princeton hits and 2 Yale errors produced a notable 7-3 victory. After 25 years of consecutive outdoor commencements in front of Nassau Hall, threatening skies forced the 1960 ceremony into the Dillon Gymnasium. With all the spectators' chairs in place in front of Nassau Hall, one father didn't get the word. He stuck it out under his umbrella. As the ceremonies unfolded inside the gymnasium, the threatening skies cleared away and it never did rain after all. But the commencement committee was happy for the practice run. It worked. On Monday, September 12th, Hurricane Donna swept into Princeton, bearing in its arms the class of 1964. The new freshmen performed the statistically impossible. Of 825 expected, and with transportation at a standstill throughout the East, 825 registered on the first day. Within 24 hours, they were agreeing among themselves that this indeed was the greatest class that ever went to Princeton. The storm brought down some giant trees. And here, Dean of the college, Jeremiah Finch, ruefully inspects 2 giant elms which came down within a few feet of his home, the Joseph Henry House. The September phenomenon of student moving was accentuated this year by the shifting into the new dormitories on the heels of the hurricane. Modern technology has devised no better way than this to move a mattress. The landscaping wasn't finished, nor were the stone walks in, so approaches to the new buildings were pretty sporty, particularly for helpful mothers. When it comes to moving, it really is tougher to lug it by yourself. But anything is possible once teamwork is organized and you can get your back into it. On October 1st, the Columbia Games Saturday, the total solicitation phase of the $53 million campaign was kicked off at a meeting outside Palmer Stadium. Here, Jim Oates, Judge Medina, and President Goheen addressed alumni. Just before the game began, Harold Helm, chairman of the Trustees Executive Committee, gave Jim Oates a souvenir jersey with the symbolic numbers 53
that
Jim Oates thanked him.
come true. Now, let's win the game.
And win it they did. Here goes Jack Sullivan all the way. But I think the man best fitted to discuss the 1960 football season is Coach Dick Coleman.
This has been a satisfying season for the coaches because it's been one of continuous and sometimes surprising improvement. Under the leadership of Don Kornrumpf and 16 other very fine seniors, this squad surprised the preseason experts who picked them for 6th place in the Ivy League by gaining undisputed possession of 2nd place with a 6-1 and 1 lost record within the league and a 7-2 overall for the season. And best of all, the boys played all year as though they really enjoyed it, with a fire and determination that was a privilege to watch. Here are a few scenes from our key November games. Against a good Harvard team, we moved the ball well, though giving up 2 touchdowns on long passes in the closing seconds of both the first half and the fourth quarter. Now in the second quarter on the Harvard 15-yard line, we see Hugh Scott on his favorite pass option play, running wide to his right to pick up 5 yards. Next, with a fullback flanking, our senior wingback Mike Eisman reverses down in there to the Harvard 7. On 4th and 2, Mike again reverses, this time throwing to Barry Schumann, our sophomore end, who makes a tremendous twisting catch for the first touchdown. Dave Goulden kicks the first of his 2 extra points here, which later on proved to be the margin of victory. With 45 seconds remaining in the first half, Harvard throws from our 28-yard line. A fine pass from Bartlett to Boone, who out-jumps Bruce Loud for the ball in our end zone. The Harvard band registers mild applause. Harvard tries for the 2-point play here in an effort to go ahead of us, but Loud does a fine job this time in knocking down the attempted pass. Now in the fourth period, a pass from Scotty to John Hagstrom starts us on our way to a second touchdown, an 18-yard gain from the Harvard 40-yard line. Here we see the Harvard jitterbugging defenses fail to halt Scott on an 8-yard end run, behind the blocking of Loud, Hagstrom, and Eisman. Watch Hagstrom's block on this next play now on the defensive halfback, as Scott runs wide again, setting up Loud's block on the end very nicely. On the quick end run to the weak side, Scotty cuts in nicely to get 5 extra yards here in the area of most intense resistance. Bumpy Loud goes up and over on the wedge play for the score. Goulden again converts to give Princeton a 14-12 victory. The next week, against an unusually fine Yale team, defensive mistakes and fumbles nullified our best offensive effort of the year. We first see Yale, already 1 TD ahead, kicking to us in the middle of the second quarter. Watch closely as Carpenter, the Yale end, steals the ball from Scotty while being beautifully blocked by Don Kornrumpf. This is a well-nigh incredible occurrence. From here, on 3rd down, Singleton rolls out to his left and hits Hutcherson for their second touchdown. This might well have discouraged some teams, but Princeton takes the ensuing kickoff and marches all the way to score. First, Mike Eisman on the fullback half-spin series goes for 5 yards behind a good block on the Yale end by Johnny Hagstrom. A moment later, Jack Sullivan hits Eisman on a pass, and the big wingback makes a fine catch for 12 more yards. In right formation now, Silky throws again behind fine protection on a delayed pass to our quarterback Hagstrom, good for 7 yards. On this next play, Eisman and Conroy take Mike Pyle, the Yale left tackle, back a full 5 yards as Sullivan follows Woolley through a big hole for 6 yards. Sullivan runs wide now behind another good block by Loud on the Yale end. Note also the downfield blocking by our quarterback Laird, our pulling lineman Clark Woolley. This play goes for 16 yards to the Yale 18. From here, our fullback again cuts the Yale end down, and Sullivan scores behind additional blocks by Eisman, Connor, and Penn Laird. Losing this game, we went on to Dartmouth, feeling that we could and would play a better balanced game. Our seniors wanted this one badly and did a great job in shutting out a good Dartmouth offense. We see us first in the first quarter here. with Sullivan running the pass option for 14 yards behind a great block by Kornrumpf. Next, we see the same play by Silky going to the left with an excellent block by Don Kornrumpf, Henry Large, and Jim Blair. Now in Dartmouth territory, a reverse from Sullivan to Turpak goes for 6 yards with a nice block by Jim Blair on the Dartmouth linebacker. An extremely dangerous runner all season, Sullivan ducks off on his own now. Note the extemporaneous block behind him by Stan Baldwin, number 75. He gets 3 men on this, an automatic first group grade. On this play, note the good power block of Craig, number 74, the trap by Tobriner, 61, and the fine effort on the linebacker by Large, 87. Unfortunately, a fumble cost us a first down here on the Dartmouth 11. Dartmouth strikes back now with Kinderdine passing to John Henry for 9 yards, tackled by Don Kornrumpf, our captain. A moment later, Al Rozicki, Dartmouth's great all-around back, carries off tackle for 11 more yards to the Princeton 12. On the next play, a Kinderdine pass to his fullback, Jim Lemon, carries literally to our 2-inch line, where Loud brings him down. Here, with the aid of an offsides penalty, we put on a good goal line stand to leave the field at the half in a scoreless tie. In the fourth quarter, Dartmouth stops us on their 1-yard line, but unable to move, they are forced to kick to us. Ron Goldman, an outstanding defensive back for us all year, fumbles after getting back to the Dartmouth 30. Again refusing to be discouraged, we stop them and force another kick. And now, with only 4 minutes left, we have the ball on our own 23, with almost 80 yards to go for a touchdown. We cannot afford to give up the ball again. Sullivan starts us off on the winning drive by running well to his left, behind blocks by Don Kornrumpf on the end and Johnny Henrich on the defensive halfback for 14 yards. Good blocks by Shaughnessy and Turpak pop Silky through inside the Dartmouth tackle for 8 more yards. A sweep to his right by Sullivan keeps the drive alive with 5 yards more. Here we are able to substitute a fresh Scott for Sullivan, and he promptly runs his option play to the left for 7 more yards into Dartmouth territory to the Dartmouth 43. With Don Kornrumpf flanking, an end run by Scott goes for 8 yards more. Dartmouth is tiring now, and our relatively fresh tailbacks have hurt them. The fullback flanker again now, and Scotty knifes inside tackle for 4 more precious yards. A sweep to the left, and Dartmouth stops Scott for only 3 yards, but we are inside their 30-yard line now. Another sweep to a flanking fullback is good for 5 yards and a first down on the Dartmouth 23. But there's only 53 seconds left in the game. On first down, then, Scotty throws on a perfectly executed play to John McMurray, who makes a nice catch to go into the end zone untouched. This is a fitting climax for our 17 seniors, and you can see they enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, McMurray announcing later that he'd never enjoyed a better tackle than his roommate, Stan Baldwin, pins on him right here.
It's been a good year at Princeton. Intellectual ferment on the campus, vitality in the faculty, the excitement of learning among the students. The best old place of all gets better every year.